Undercover, he entered the establishment to observe the manner in which customers were treated. His greatest apprehension was validated by the sounds that emanated from behind him. As he turned the key, his old Ford Ranger was parked just outside the showroom, its engine twitching in protest. The driver's seat was stitched with duct tape, and the pickup was a faded blue color with worn paint on the sides. When he emerged, no one gave him a second glimpse, which was precisely what he desired. He effortlessly merged in, donning a canvas jacket, plain trousers, and work boots that were soiled with dried-up red dirt. He appeared to be a man who had just returned from a construction site to the outside world. It is possible that welding is involved. Potentially, roofing. Nobody anticipated that. Less than 12 hours ago, he was in a conference room, signing payroll checks for this establishment. The dealership was situated just outside of Amarillo, Texas. Not excessively large, not excessively extravagant. The joint of Chevrolet and GMC is situated on the outskirts of a congested roadway. 5 years prior, he acquired it. The entire establishment was rebranded, reconstructed the utility facility, engaged a youthful individual, paid satisfactorily. However, there had been a recent occurrence of murmurs that he was unable to disregard. In the past 2 months, Melinda, his assistant, had submitted 3 distinct complaints to him. Quiet. All of the consumers are black or Latino, and they all shared a common experience. They felt either ignored or talked down to. He desired to believe that it was a miscommunication, a single error. However, a voice within him urged him to reconsider. So there he was, strolling through his own dealership. The man who paid their salaries had just walked through the front door, and no one realized it. A dry and monotone voice cried out, "Do you require assistance with anything?" He turned to observe a salesman in his mid-30s, with receding hair and a clipboard hidden under his arm, who was gazing at him without a smile. The CEO responded with a casual tone. "Yes, I am in the market for a truck." Man shrugged. "New or used?" "In use." An additional sigh. "They are dispersed throughout the area." He directed his attention to a series of vehicles that were covered in dust and were parked in the midday sun. "Walk-through is not necessary." Absence of an embrace. Unwelcome. The CEO nodded, directing his attention more toward himself than the salesman, and proceeded toward the vehicles. A black SUV was exited by a young woman and her spouse, both of whom were Caucasian, and in their early 30s, and were both wearing golf shirts. A second salesman, who was younger and had gelled-up hair and dazzling teeth, was already jogging toward them. The young fellow greeted everyone with a cheerful welcome in. "While we examine the situation, would it be possible for me to provide you with coffee or water? By the way, the air conditioning is functioning properly inside." All of it was captured by the CEO. He halted at a Silver Sierra 1500, uncontaminated. Model that is relatively recent. The passenger door has a minor damage. The price was $24,300, as indicated on the price sticker. He bent to inspect the tires. The initial salesman reappeared behind him, his hands buried in his pockets. He muttered, "That one's got some miles on it, but she runs all right." "What is the distance?" "Approximately 110. Do you believe we have a maintenance record on file? Would you like me to consult with someone?" The CEO gingerly rose from his seat, pausing to survey the surroundings. The second salesman was already causing the couple inside to chuckle. They had yet to examine a single vehicle. He returned his attention to the individual who was standing in front of him. "Certainly. I would like to review the maintenance history and potentially conduct a test drive." The merchant exhaled, as if it were a burden. "Certainly. I will retrieve the keys." The CEO opened his notes app on his phone as the man departed. A brief statement. The salesperson was unaware of the mileage or records of the Silver Sierra 1500. "There is no engagement." This was not about being challenging. The subject of this discussion was the truth. He observed the reflection in the truck's window, which depicted a man in his late 40s with calloused hands from years prior to the boardrooms, and a subtle grey beard. His pupils, however, were very acute. He was too familiar with the sensation of being evaluated by an individual who believed that he or she had nothing to contribute. That memory is never truly forgotten. The wind increased in intensity, and it carried the faint sound of a distant guffaw emanating from the showroom. However, the subsequent events would be more profound than he had anticipated. The salesman returned 5 minutes later, holding the keys suspended from one finger and a disheveled printout in the other. "I have your record and the keys," he stated with the same sincerity as a DMV attendant on his third shift. "Please return it in 20 minutes. The CEO retrieved the paper and briefly examined the maintenance journal, which was only half filled. The log documented oil adjustments, one tire rotation, and a battery replacement. Insufficient. The odometer reading did not even correspond with the dates. He folded the sheet and placed it in his back pocket. "Thank you. Would you mind if I ask a few questions before I take it for a spin?" The merchant gazed at him as if he had requested a foot rub. In the same way as, "What is the number of owners? You mentioned that it runs all right. Does that imply that it has issues?" The individual exhaled, and then shifted on his heels. "It has been involved in a minor collision. As for the number of owners, it is possible that there are 2 or 3. I cannot provide a definitive answer. Additionally, there are no issues with the vehicle. I did mention that it is operational, correct?" The CEO's smile was tightly curled. "You did. I simply wanted to verify it, as I would be the one purchasing it." An additional sigh. The man did not even attempt to conceal his impatience. However, prior to departing, the CEO stipulated, "Do you think you would be conversing with me differently if I were holding a lease and a polo shirt?" The inquiry remained unanswered for a brief period. The salesman blinking, uncertain as to whether it was a jest or something else. However, rather than responding, he turned and strolled away. He was not contacted by the CEO. He stood there, keys in hand, staring at the individual as he disappeared into the building. The lot was now devoid of activity. The pavement radiated heat. A truck's siren blared from the road beyond the fence. However, the situation was evident within the dealership's confines. He entered the Sierra and initiated the engine. Squeaking emanated from the seat. Before emitting tepid air, the air conditioning system wheezed. He steadily accelerated and adjusted the rear-view mirror before driving around the block. It afforded him the opportunity to contemplate. He was hesitant to accept that this was the dealership's current state, but the evidence he had gathered thus far corroborated the complaints. The system was the source of bias, not the other way around. He returned to the same location, parked, and exited the vehicle. Bright light and tile floors characterized the showroom's interior. The young salesman was directing his attention to a digital screen, while the couple from earlier were now seated in a comfortable position, drinking bottled water. As he entered, no one glanced at him, not the receptionist, nor the manager, who was preoccupied with his laptop. It is conceivable that he was an apparition. He proceeded directly to the front desk. "I recently tested the Silver Sierra, and am interested in continuing with it," he stated. The receptionist, a slender woman with a neat ponytail, raised her head. "Which one?" "Silver. 26 Sierras. 110,000 miles. She typed a message and then turned to him. "Please allow me to locate an individual for you." He awaited. Absence of a grin. "I am not grateful for your presence." Just a glance and a touch of the keyboard. The same disinterested salesman, who was holding a clipboard, reappeared after an additional minute. "Are you prepared to discuss numbers? Let's." They proceeded to a workstation that was disorganized and situated in the corner. The weight of the CEO caused the chair to creak. The salesman tapped his screen with 2 fingertips, acting irritated, and at a sluggish pace. "Do you have financing or are you paying cash?" "Cash." That was examined briefly. "Really?" "Yes." "What is the issue?" "No. In fact, the majority of individuals do not." The CEO leaned slightly back. "I am not the majority of people." The price was a subject of debate between them. The vendor attempted to persuade the customer to purchase unnecessary add-ons, such as warranty plans and undercoat protection. The CEO declined all of it, maintaining a steady but courteous tone in his voice. He had previously performed this performance numerous occasions. He observed an object in the exhibit that caused him to feel sick. A tall black man, likely in his early 20s, stood hesitantly near the entrance wearing a faded hoodie and trousers. He was evidently anticipating assistance as he held a portfolio. No one approached. No one spoke. The CEO observed the young man take a few tentative steps forward, then turn around and exit the building, uncontacted. There is no sales spiel, nothing. The CEO's mandible contracted slightly, but he maintained his composure. The merchant advanced the paper at his desk. "If all appears to be in order, please sign here." The pen was halfway to the paper when a voice from behind him, both keen and frustrated, sounded out. "Why is he receiving assistance while I have been waiting here for 10 minutes? However, that voice would alter everything. Andre refrained from raising his voice. It was unnecessary for him to do so. While the truth settled over the room like dense dust, he stood there, placid, unwavering, and unshakable. In that instant, no one could conceal themselves behind courteous expressions or company slogans. He turned to the Caucasian man who had initiated the entire situation. "You wish to discuss fairness? Consider the fairness of evaluating a man solely on the basis of his boots and jacket." Andre did not recoil as the man murmured something under his breath. He was not performing this for his own benefit. He was doing it for the child who fled without being observed, for the unmarried mothers who arrived in search of assistance but were instead dismissed, for all those who were never afforded an equitable opportunity in locations similar to this. The vendor, who was still clutching the business card, appeared to have aged 10 years in the span of 10 minutes. Andre stated, "I have been patient. I was committed to establishing a business that prioritized the well-being of all of its customers, not just a select few. And I was of the opinion that if I employed competent individuals, provided them with adequate compensation, and allowed them to develop, they would demonstrate respect for others." He advanced toward the object. "However, the behavior I observed today is not merely subpar service. It is a complete failure." The finance manager had now emerged, standing a few steps behind the attendant. The younger merchant, who had previously extended the red carpet to the couple, discreetly retreated after peeking around the corner. Andre maintained his gaze. "Do you believe I failed to observe that?" The couple in the SUV was greeted with a full smile and pitch as soon as they exited the vehicle, with water in hand. "Nevertheless, I received a grumble, and a finger pointed at the group." He shook his head, not out of wrath, but rather out of disappointment. "I have invested an inordinate amount of effort into this organization, to allow it to devolve into a gatekeeping machine." The merchant struggled to speak. "Mr. Talbot, I didn't mean to." He intervened. "That is the issue. You do not intend to do so. However, you continue to do so." The room was now silent, not the kind that is uncomfortable, the type that occurs when the audience is aware that the previous statement cannot be disregarded. Andre turned his attention to the finance manager. "For how long have you been employed here?" The individual adjusted his posture. 3 years, sir." "And how frequently have you observed an incident of this nature?" The manager appeared uncertain, gazing downward. "That was my initial impression." Andre returned to the desk, and resurrected the pen, this time not to autograph the documentation, but to redact his name. Throughout the contract, a single unbroken line. "I will not be purchasing anything today," he declared in a voice that filled the room. The salesman's jaw fell. "However, it is a reliable vehicle. We have already completed half of the paperwork." Andre stated, "You did not sell me that truck. I was already convinced upon my arrival. You merely provided me with an excuse to delay the transaction." A moment of silence. Next he included, "You are finished after today." The salesman blinks. "I what?" "You are terminated with immediate effect." The manager proceeded with caution. "Should I contact HR?" "No need," Andre replied. "I will personally address the matter." The individual remained in a state of bewilderment. Andre did not request that he depart. It was unnecessary for him to do so. The silence emanating from every nook and cranny of the room was more resonant than any farewell. Turning back to the other employees, he observed them from behind workstations and in corners. "If you believe that your role is to transport vehicles, you are in the wrong industry. Your responsibility is to provide service to all individuals. The truck is the product, and trust is the sale." He allowed the information to penetrate his mind. Subsequently, he added, his voice now gentler, as if he were conversing with himself, "I constructed this structure to eliminate the necessity for individuals to feel as though they were compelled to prove themselves in order to be taken seriously. And if necessary, I will demolish it to rectify the situation." However, just as it appeared that the message had been successfully conveyed, an unforeseen circumstance compelled him to advance even further. Andre turned to depart. There was no indication that he was rushing out.
He walked with the tranquil assurance of a man who was aware of his identity. Nevertheless, the customer, who had previously lodged a complaint, and was in possession of the car keys, reopened his mouth before he could advance more than a few steps. You believe that you are imparting a lesson. That is commendable. However, you are not permitted to terminate an employee solely because your emotions were hurt. Andre ceased. He did not immediately turn around. He briefly closed his eyes, his jaw fixed, and resisted the wave that was forming in his chest. His voice was low and steady, but his visage was inscrutable when he turned back. Andre stated, "I refrained from terminating him due to the emotional distress it caused me. I terminated him due to his failure to demonstrate fundamental respect for others. There is a distinction." The man's arms were folded as he sneered. "You are being overly dramatic. It is not a significant issue that he did not extend a red carpet to you. It is not indicative of racism. It is possible that he was having a bad day." Andre advanced, thereby reducing the distance between them by half. "You know what's wild?" he asked, his voice remaining placid, but now audible. "I would like to believe that. I wish it was simply a bad day. I wish it were a one-time experience. However, it is not. I have received complaint emails from customers who are similar to myself, informing me of the same experiences that I encountered today. I have now witnessed it firsthand." He directed his attention to the showroom. "I observed a young man exit the premises without a word being spoken to him. I observed this team consistently disregard an individual who was stationed at the entrance, not once, not twice, but numerous times. That is not a single instance of a terrible day. That is a cultural phenomenon." Again a stillness had descended. The few customers who were still present in the building had ceased their perusing. Their gazes were directed toward Andre, with some expressing curiosity, and others feeling guilty. Man shrugged. "Whatever. It appears that you are merely employing the race card to enhance your sense of significance." Andre took a hesitant step forward, as the sentence struck him like a blow in the face. Although his voice did not elevate, it was more significant than any statement he had previously made. "You are unaware of the sensation of entering a room and experiencing a temperature shift as a result of your appearance. You are unaware of the experience of being inquired about your occupation prior to receiving a handshake. You are unaware of the experience of having a contract explained to you in a manner that is beyond your comprehension." He shook his head. "And it is possible that you will never do so. However, you are not permitted to remain in this position and maintain a denial of its existence, particularly in light of the fact that you have just observed it." The individual refrained from responding. Andre gazed around the room once more. He was no longer conversing with a single individual, rather, he was conversing with each and every one of them. "I did not have a lot of support during my childhood. My mother was responsible for the cleaning of lodgings. Until his back gave out, my father was laying concrete. They lacked connections. There is no contingency strategy. Pride is all. They instilled in me the importance of hard work and the importance of never making excuses. I did not make excuses when individuals called me names, locked their car doors when I passed by, or observed me shopping as if I were about to steal something." He hesitated. His voice cracked slightly, but not out of frailty, but rather out of truth. "I still succeeded. I constructed something, and I made certain to treat others better than I was treated."
That is the reason this is significant. The manner in which we greet individuals, respond to their inquiries, and affect their emotions is a reflection of our identity. He permitted the silence to return. There was no interruption. The man who had initiated the incident gradually turned and departed. "There is no need for an apology. There are no comments. I have just departed." One final time, Andre examined the employees. "This location necessitates modification, commencing today." However, just as he believed the moment had passed, an individual spoke up, and it was not the individual he had anticipated. A calm voice penetrated the silence from the far end of the emporium. "Mr. Talbot." It originated from a young woman who was situated in close proximity to the service counter. Early to mid-20s, mild-mannered, hair secured in a close bun. Andre slowly turned to her. He scarcely recognized her. She primarily worked behind the scenes in the back office, assisting with documents and invoices on a part-time basis. He briefly forgot her name. "Danica," she said softly, as if she could read his mind. He agreed. "Danica, You are correct. Her voice was now steady as she stepped forward. I have been in this location for nearly 1 year. I have witnessed events that I were eager to discuss, but I assumed that no one would be interested. Andre did not respond. He permitted her to continue. It has been my experience to observe how specific consumers are overlooked, the manner in which the tone alters as a result of the individual entering the room. And when I attempted to discreetly discuss the matter with a superior, I was advised to respect my pay grade. Therefore I implemented it. I ceased conversing. But something in Andre's irises softened, despite the fact that his visage remained stationary. Danica gazed around the room. She was not merely conversing with him at this moment. I anticipated that it would eventually undergo a transformation, that an individual in a position of authority would observe. However, it is possible that we all believed that someone else was going to make a statement. Andre walked toward her after taking a deep inhale. I am grateful for your prompt response, he stated. She agreed. It was necessary to express it. He resumed his gaze toward the remainder of the chamber. Everyone appeared to have undergone a transformation. A few individuals were embarrassed. Certain individuals were uncertain. A small number of individuals refrained from making eye contact. Andre stated, I did not come to this location to cause anyone any embarrassment. However, I was compelled to ascertain the information for myself. I was compelled to uncover the truth that had been concealed beneath the veneer of civility and justifications. He turned his attention to the receptionist, who was now gazing downward at her workstation. You were also aware that something was amiss, weren't you? Initially she declined to respond. Subsequently, quietly, yes. What was the reason for your silence? I was apprehensive about losing my employment. Andre's head bowed slowly. I comprehend that. However, the absence of sound allows this matter to flourish. The situation worsens as we continue to remain silent. And then one day, we look around us and realize that the place where we work is not the place we thought we were in the process of constructing. He hesitated. Accountability is not solely about assigning blame. It is about resolving the issue in a cohesive manner. The room remained motionless, as if it were anticipating the arrival of the subsequent item. Andre retreated to the desk, where the documentation remained. The pen, the crossed-out signature, the half-filled contract. He retrieved the business card that he had dropped earlier and held it aloft. This card does not imply that I possess all the knowledge. It simply indicates that I possess a small amount of authority. However, what is the value of that if I am unable to apply it to improve the situation? He observed the workstation of the salesman, who had been terminated. It was now devoid of any items. I am not merely providing a single example. I am modifying the course of action at this location. Commencing today. He directed his gaze toward Danica. Do you wish to assist me with that? She glanced. Who am I? Indeed. You have observed the areas that require improvement. That is what renders you valuable. I am seeking an individual who is not apprehensive about speaking up when they perceive an issue. Is it possible for you to accomplish that? Her voice wavered slightly. Certainly. I am capable of doing so. Andre's smile was the first genuine one of the day. Very well. Now let us commence. He addressed the remaining personnel. A meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. It is mandatory. We are rewriting certain things, not only on paper, but also in the way we present ourselves to all individuals. He allowed his words to linger for a moment, before proceeding toward the front doors. He embraced the sun, despite its blinding intensity. His phone vibrated as he returned to the furnace. A message from Melinda. All is well. He responded by typing, not yet. But it will be. However, there was still one final task that needed to be completed, in order to complete the task for which he had arrived. Andre did not immediately enter the vintage Ford Ranger. Rather, he proceeded past it, searching left and right as he walked toward the sidewalk and the street. He was in search of an individual, and just as he began to believe that it might be too late, he spotted him, the young man from earlier. The folder was still hidden under his arm, and he was standing under the shade of a bus stop across the road, headphones in his ears. The identical faded hoodie, the same reserved demeanor. He was gazing down the street, anticipating an event that was not imminent. Andre swiftly crossed the threshold. Hey, he shouted. The young man regarded the situation with caution. Andre approached with a deliberate pause, elevating one hand in a manner reminiscent of a peace offering. I do not intend to cause any alarm. I encountered you earlier in the showroom. One earbud was extracted by the child. You were anticipating assistance, but no one provided it. The young man nodded once. It was not the first instance. Andre inclined his head. How frequently do you visit this location? I have been in search of a truck. An item that has been previously employed. Nothing spectacular. In the past 2 weeks, I have visited 5 locations. The narrative is consistent on each occasion. Andre let out a breath. What is your name? Ezekiel. Ezekiel. Andre reiterated. My name is Andre. I am the proprietor of that dealership located there. Ezekiel raised his eyebrows. You being sincere, extremely grave. Ezekiel chuckled once, not out of malice, but rather out of surprise. I was under the impression that you were merely another individual receiving the same treatment. Andre smiled briefly. I was. He approached with a slight decrease in volume. I deliberately dressed in this manner to observe the manner in which my team interacted with individuals when they were unaware of their identities. Which of the following did I observe today? I am not in agreement with it. Ezekiel conducted research on him. What is the next course of action? Andre retrieved his phone from his pocket. Do you still require a truck? Ezekiel hesitantly nodded. Return indoors with me. This time I am not acting as a customer. Rather I am serving as my guest. I would appreciate it if you could meet with Danica. She is an individual in whom I have confidence. Additionally, we will locate an item that is both dependable and affordable. You will receive the respect that you were entitled to from the instant you entered. Ezekiel did not respond immediately. He gazed at the structure that was situated behind them before returning to Andre. His voice was subdued. You are not required to do that. Andre acknowledged. I am aware, nevertheless I am inclined to do so. There was an extended period of silence. Ezekiel then gave a genuine assent. The type that responds with, okay, I am participating. They proceeded to cross the street in tandem. Something felt different as they re-entered the glass doors. Individuals observed. Employees maintained a more upright posture. A small number of individuals appeared to be embarrassed. However, no one declined. Danica was already at the forefront, prepared. She acknowledged Andre with a single inclination, and subsequently extended a warm greeting to Ezekiel, that seemed to have been absent for an extended period. Andre refrained from hovering. He observed from a distance, his arms folded. This was the primary motivation behind his establishment of this enterprise. In addition to the sale of vehicles, the objective is to construct an improved product. Something that is sincere, something that is equitable. Additionally, the culture had shifted at some point. However, it was not too late to rectify the situation. Andre finally stepped outside for the first time, this time in earnest, after Ezekiel was seated, and Danica began to bring up options. He entered his aged Ranger, initiated the engine, and maintained his position for a brief period. No speech was playing in his mind. Absence of melody that causes swelling. There was only the gentle murmur of the engine and the balmy breeze that blew through the open window. He had made a decision that day that was not solely about a vehicle, a staff member, or a business, but also about the type of legacy he wished to leave behind. Not exclusively in the capacity of CEO. In the capacity of a male. A man who arrived, despite the fact that it would have been simpler to remain mute. An individual who recalled the sensation of being disregarded. A man who not only discussed the necessity of change, but also ensured that it began in his own household. He placed the vehicle in drive, and proceeded to drive away, gradually and steadily, disappearing into the sunlight. A degree is required for certain individuals to obtain their title. It is earned by others over time. However, the individuals who are deserving of it are those who never neglect their origins and utilize every ounce of their influence to elevate others. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider sharing it. Additionally, please remember to subscribe for additional narratives that convey the truth, regardless of the difficulty of the subject matter.